circling back to sort of Strava, when you had that idea of like, well, now we got to take this to the next level, what did that look like? Not just from the brainstorming perspective, but like, okay, how do I now speak to people, and then how do I get traction on what I think could be big? What was that process like?
Yeah. So a little bit of background to set that stage and the context for it. So the first thing everybody has to remember is Michael was a PhD in economics, and I graduated with a degree in art history. So we can't write code. We are not software developers. So if we're going to come up with an idea like Strava, the very first thing we got to do is we got to figure out if we can rope anybody in who actually knows how to put some of this stuff, onto a computer or onto a phone. And so I got to give credit where it's due. There's an amazing gentleman he's still with us at Strava today. His name's Davey Kitchell. And Davey was somebody that Michael had met out in New Hampshire, where Michael was at the time that we started Strava. And Davey was an endurance athlete like Michael and I, was really passionate about thinking about ways in which we could use data to kind of create stories and inspire. And he and Michael was working on one idea because we weren't sure which idea we were going to pursue. So Michael and his nephew, Pello, were working on one idea. And this was around sort of water conservation and so forth. And then Davey and I were working on the Strava idea. And when I say working on, you're right. A lot of it was we had this theory that there was a lot of data being captured by some of these very basic devices, either worn on your wrist or on your handlebars of a bike, a Garmin device. But people were treating that data almost like circa 1980 Timex watch. They were really just start, stop, how far did I go, how fast did I go, and that was it. Yet there was a little mini computer that was sitting there that was capturing all kinds of information around grade and elevation and average speed and heart rate. And could we bring that information together and create visuals that maybe were interesting for somebody after they had gone for a ride? We were very focused on the cyclists at the time because they had access to this data. And Davey built a website. Again, you have to go back. This is 2007, 2008 now, 2009. He built a very basic website. We called it the Green Machine because it was this horrific color of green that we were contemplating as sort of the Strava colors.
Oh, so it wasn't originally orange.
Yeah, we ultimately came up with orange. Thank goodness for orange. That was another person who helped us on that. But at the time, we had this crazy green. And with that, he threw everything but the kitchen sink into it. We probably had features in that first website that still haven't made it to commercial, Strava life today. But in doing that, he created just enough of a basic little platform, that true MVP, right? That minimally viable experience. And then we just started conning, honestly, a few of our friends to try uploading their Garmin data to Strava. Again, this is back in a time when you had to take a Garmin off of your bike, plug it into the back of your computer, upload it, and do it. So I often joke with entrepreneurs in the early days, do things that don't scale, right? If you're going to walk away with it, it's like people want to focus on scale and network effects early on. We were focused on one thing. If we had one person uploading to Strava, could we get them to come back and do it again? Are we creating enough utility and enough value there? And kudos to Davey. He kind of just kept tinkering with this website, and that led to a pivotal summer of 2008, where we actually brought about 20 of our closest friends, about half were on the East Coast, half were on the West Coast. We brought them onto Strava in a competition. We basically put East Coast up against West Coast. Hey, would you guys do this for 30 days? It was right during the Tour de France in 2008. And we would send out little emails every day saying, hey, whoever posts the fastest, 5K on their bike, we'll get them a pair of socks, or, we'll give them some racing wheels, or whatever we could afford. And we said, and in return, we'd love to get feedback. We'd love to sort of see if you guys are enjoying this process. And, we were fortunate, Barry. By the end of that 30 days, we really saw a couple things. We saw a high energy. People were not just willing to upload, they wanted to upload. They wanted to sort of see what they were experiencing. And we were also really surprised by the amount of interaction between the cyclists online. I think we hadn't anticipated that there was sort of this social component to Strava, where by allowing the kind of, at the time, it was sort of this trash talking and this interaction that was going on, even by email, not even on the platform, we realized, there's something to this. There's something about sharing your activities with other people that keeps you motivated. So that experience in the summer of 2008 was the catalyst for Michael and I saying, we're not quite sure what the business looks like, but there's something here. You know, we're solving a problem. We're hitting on a need. Let's get some professional developers behind us. We had some good friends that we had known from our prior company that were willing to join us, and away we went. You know, by early 2009, we had a small team, and we were beginning to build something that we could charge for.
I want to quickly just go back to something you said initially. I know that it was very nuanced, but I think it was so profound, is the idea of not thinking about scale at such an early stage. I think a lot of VCs or investors, they always say, you know, how are you going to scale? How are you going to scale? Yes, I think scale does matter at some point, but not when you're starting out in the trenches, not when you're just testing out the idea and getting that MVP running. And I think the whole notion of satisfying the consumer at the end of the day, and I think obviously this has been something that Amazon has done and a lot of other companies have done, is how do you just get them satisfied and retain them so that they can continue to use the product. And in this case, it was, well, I liked the Strava. I was seeing where I went and what I did, and I want to do it again, and I get to share that. And I think it just gets into this nice flywheel effect. So I just wanted to sort of segue into that, because I think that's a really important point for people, just to say, look, don't worry about scale. Just get people to love your product.
It's so true. You know how many people, they always ask me, you know, so today Strava adds anywhere from 1 million to 2 million members every month. You know, we're incredibly fortunate. We have this very nice flywheel effect, and our members just keep inviting their friends to join. That's not how we started. Like, I still remember, you know, customer number one, the first customer that truly was our customer, was paying subscription to everybody else. His name is David. He lives in the Bay Area. He's still on Strava 13 years later. I know who he is. You know, we still kudo each other. And I remember number one, and I remember number two, and I remember number three. I remember the single digits because that was the thesis was, if you don't have utility, if you don't, you know, all these horrible buzzwords, product market fit and stuff, but fundamentally, if you're not engaging with your customer and they're not coming back, in the case of a product like ours, where we're hopeful that they're seeing enough value that they're going to use it on a frequent basis, why spend any time thinking about growth and scale? And I think there is real pressure oftentimes from investors and others to kind of think about that next chapter. And I'm not dismissing it. To your point, there's a point where scale becomes important, but I could tell you all kinds of funny stories of, I mean, Michael and I, we went down to Costco at one point and we bought hundreds of Garmin devices for the sheer purpose of like handing them out to friends, just so that we could get more people onto the platform. And, you know, and it was kind of like begging, hey, just try this. Will you try it? If we give you a Garmin device to use, would you try it out? But it worked, because not only did they use it, they started giving us the feedback we needed to kind of refine the experience. And they started giving us some critical pieces of information that really helped us think about how to make it a business and what they were willing to pay for. And
what was that reaction like when you went to Costco and you bought all those Garmin devices? Did they give you a stare?
So many horror stories. We could tell you so many horror stories. First off, Garmin themselves, they're a wonderful partner of ours today. But in the early days of Strava, I don't think they knew what to do with us. And we tried to get a retail relationship with them. And, you know, we think we can help resell product. They didn't want to disrupt, you know, their traditional retailers. So we had to go and find these things. And so kudos to Michael, because he was the one really tracking stuff down. We would get on the phone with Costco managers, frankly, across the country. And if we could find that there'd been a shipment, hey, we'll take 50 of those Garmin 300s that, you know, people put on their handlebars, and they'd ship them to us. But I also have horror stories of eBay sellers that we tried to buy from, and like, oh yeah, we got 100 of them for you. And then we try to buy them, and we'd send a check, and we never saw those Garmins. So, you know, this is part of the story, right? This is again, you win and you lose, but that's what
it speaks to the
getting some customers to. We needed people. I think sometimes entrepreneurs worry too much about trying to get the product just right, so they want to put it in the hands of somebody.
Right.
It's software, and in software case, like, we wanted to get it in front of people as quickly as possible so that we could then iterate. We could kind of use that feedback loop as a way to, you know, just keep refining, keep fine tuning, and find that sweet spot.